How do you do, sixth graders? Mr. Plog here. By the way, if you never knew, when somebody says howdy like a cowboy, that's actually what that's short for. It's short for how do you do, but it just seems a little bit neater to say howdy. So there you go. If you never knew that before, you learned that today. All right, we are picking up from where we left off yesterday, which if you are in cohort A, you did this in class. If you're in distance learning, we did this online as well, okay? Today, we are going to be working on what we call active mapping again, and we are going to do it with the United States today instead of Minnesota. So if you are in cohort A and you were at school, which would have been yesterday, which is Wednesday, you should have had one of these that you took home with you. And I was saying to you probably multiple times, you will use this to do your mapping tomorrow. So if you don't have that out, hit pause, grab it, and get started. Okay, so I am going to quickly plug in my document camera because I found out that you cannot project your face if you have your document camera plugged in first, which was kind of an interesting revelation for me. All right, so let's pull this up. Okay, let's quickly get my phone out of the way. Hit the magic button of focus. Boy, I wish that we all had that. If I could have that for my brain, that'd be sweet, huh? Okay, here is your map. I'm going to tuck it just very quickly underneath here, and then I'm going to try get it so that the cord of the document camera is not as much of a pain in the rear. All right, that looks pretty dang good. Okay, so here we have the United States, right? Now, just like with your Minnesota map yesterday, any location that's on here, you could be responsible for on your weekly assessment. I'm just going to be nice to you and say that it's going to be 5, okay? You're going to need to know 5 of these in the end. But I think it's fair enough to assume that with a little bit of practice and studying that you'll be ready for tomorrow, okay? So let's see. Well, actually, you don't have to take it tomorrow. You could take it this afternoon, couldn't you? All right, so we start off. I think we're going to go with something that we did when we were doing our Minnesota map yesterday, and that is this one right here. So I am going to do a little snaky circle here to go along with the contours of this river. And then I'm going to take my pen and put my label off over here. Remember, I think you should use pencil, but I'm just using pen because it shows up easier. I want to make sure everybody can see it, okay? So I am going to write in the name of this river. This is the Mississippi River, right? So we saw the start of it in Minnesota, but then it disappears on us to the south, right? If you can see it here, this is a great graphic because it actually shows it going all the way down until it empties into this body of water down here and then out into the ocean, okay? I think since we started with bodies of water, why don't we just work our way down there? So right here, this is the city of New Orleans in Louisiana, okay? And that's where the Mississippi River hits this body of water that we see down to the south, okay? So if you have an exit ticket that asks you about this, this is what we're talking about, okay? This is the Gulf of Mexico. And it's not a gulf. I wish it was because I love golf. It's called a gulf because it's a very, very large body of salt water, but it's not quite big enough to be an ocean. It's connected to it, but it's a little bit smaller. So this is the Gulf of Mexico. There's also one in Arabia called the Persian Gulf. It's the same thing, right? It's a big body of salt water that connects to an ocean, but because of Florida here and the Caribbean Sea down here, it kind of has its own little connection to land. So we call that the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, we could probably move over and write the country of Mexico down, but we'll come back to that later. We'll stick with bodies of water for right now. Okay, why don't we go over to the west? Now, this is kind of tough because even though it's the world's biggest ocean, we really don't have very much of it in this map. So what I'm going to do is, because we've got a city down here, I'm going to label this ocean up here, okay? And it's going to be the Pacific Ocean. Fun fact, the Pacific Ocean is named that because the Latin root for peace is this PAC. So in other words, when it was discovered, people thought it was the peaceful ocean. It's not. It just happens to be more peaceful on this side of the Pacific. If you go into Eastern Asia, where the Pacific Ocean hits, I know a lot of the islands out there, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, there are some horrible, horrible storms over there called monsoons. And, well, they're hurricanes. We just call them by a different name, okay? So it's the peaceful ocean for us, not for the other side of the world, okay? Let's go over to the east. We'll go right above the compass rose here. This is the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean. It is the ocean that the lost city of Atlantis is supposedly in somewhere, but no one's ever been able to find it. The Atlantic Ocean is to the east. This is our ocean that gives us our bad storms, our hurricanes. When we're filming this right now, hurricane season is in full swing, right? It's where the coast of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, even some of our other very, very large cities here in the United States are all on the coast of this ocean. I will tell you, after swimming in both in my lifetime, I definitely like swimming in this one. It's a lot warmer than over here, definitely. Okay, now let's move in. I think let's do both of our neighboring countries, and then we'll get into some key American cities, okay? Actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. We'll do the mountain ranges last. Okay, so to the south, we have the country of Mexico, right? I've known a lot of my students already in my short time here that have some ties to this country. Very, very rich history in the last few hundred years. We cover it quite in depth, actually, when we get into our Latin American history unit. So I'm really excited about that. But our country of Mexico, our neighboring country of Mexico is down here to the south, bordering Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. All right, and to the north, we have our other neighbor, our neighbor that in Minnesota we are much more familiar with. In fact, a lot of people say that aren't from here that they believe we sound like we're from this country. And I have also gotten it from my home state as well. So just because of how I talk, people say I sound like I'm from here. This is Canada, which is the second largest country in terms of land area on Earth. The United States is number 3. Interestingly, though, it has about 1/10 of the amount of people that live there than we do. So we're about 340 million or so. They're about 32 million, but they're a bigger country than us. But of course, you know, once you go far enough north, I don't think you could pay me to live with how cold it would be out there. It'd be brutal. Okay, moving on. We've got our 2 neighboring countries. Now, let's go on to some major, one more thing. Before major cities. One chain of lakes that are up here. One of them, as we know from yesterday, borders the United States. Actually, one of them borders Minnesota. They all border the United States. This is the Great Lakes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. I always remember that because we had that great acronym when I was in 6th grade called HOMES to remember them all. All right, the Great Lakes. By the way, the Great Lakes have like an overwhelmingly amount of fresh water in the world just in those 5 lakes alone. So it should be pretty interesting if water ever becomes scarce. I feel like people are going to start fighting over those Great Lakes. But for right now, they're beautiful and they're right in our backyard. Okay, now, like the third time, on to major American cities. The first one we are going to do is the one that's closest to us. Right here, one of the top 5 biggest cities in the United States is the city of Chicago in Illinois. It is a huge, huge port of goods coming in off of Lake Michigan, home of the Chicago Bears, the Sears Tower, And of course, one of my all-time favorite places in the United States, Shedd Aquarium. Went there for the first time a couple of years ago. It's really cool. Okay, the next one we are going to do is the city of Los Angeles, which translated from Spanish is simply the angels. So I am going to put my circle here, my label marker out here, and we are going to write in Los Angeles. The biggest city in California. It's not the capital though, but it is home to Hollywood, which is where most of our videos are shot in the United States. There's a couple sports teams that play there, but really it's a huge business hub where a lot of the biggest businesses in all of the Western coast have their corporate headquarters. It's a very, very large city, and it probably has the worst traffic of any place I've ever been to, ever. It's just ridiculous. Now, the next city is way bigger, but I noticed there aren't as many traffic problems there because hardly anybody drives. It's right here. Some of you might know this place. They have a couple football teams from here. Our current president is from there. And most notably, lately, they have a very, very popular governor that's been talking about what he's been doing to help the COVID-19 crisis. But this is just the city that bears the same name as that state. This is New York City. It is the biggest exit ticket, the biggest metro area or city in the United States. And why does it have such little traffic, you ask? Because they have a great subway system there, and it reaches so many areas so quickly that it actually has kind of made driving cars really not all that necessary. It's pretty neat. Let's go on to our nation's capital, which is up in this area. I'm going to draw a star. It is named after who is called the father of our country, George Washington. I'm sure you've heard of it because hopefully you'll get to go there when you're in 8th grade. It's Washington, D.C. I have never been there, and it's probably the #1 place that I want to visit that I haven't been to yet. Fun fact about Washington, D.C., it was not the original capital of the United States. In fact, there were many before it, but it was made specifically to be a capital because they founded it on a swamp, and they figured nobody is going to want to invade this gross, nasty swamp, so let's put our capital there, and then that way we don't have to worry about that. Well, 24 years later, it was invaded and the White House was burned to the ground, but it was a good try. So the White House we have now is not actually the original one. Fun fact for you. Let's see, I think we're gonna finish up with 3 more things. So first, let's go ahead and highlight the state of Minnesota just so that we are aware of where our state lies within the United States. All right, and then I think with just how everything is going with these labels, I'm gonna pull a label line way out here and write Minnesota. Okay. Probably could have wrote that a little bit bigger. I'll zoom in just a little bit, see if it helps. Sorry about that. There you go. Okay, next, we are gonna go here to this spot. I'm gonna draw some of these peaks in because I think it's kind of hard to see them. Maybe you can see them when you're looking at it, but it just makes it more clear that we have mountains up here. This is our western mountain range in the United States. This is the Rocky Mountains. I've been to the national park, and it is an absolutely gorgeous place. The mountains are very steep, and the peaks are very pointy. And that's because as you get into earth science, you'll learn that when mountains are newly formed, they're very, very rough and coarse. And over time, there's this thing called weathering with wind and water that kind of files them down, let's say, naturally. So right now, these are our this is the younger of our two major mountain ranges in the United States. The older one is over here. Now, this one is going to be hard because it goes all the way up here. We have all this other stuff. So I am going to make my peaks over here. And I'm going to draw a little circle to show that we're encompassing that. And we will put our label mark over here. And this is the Appalachian Mountains. So if you've ever heard of someone being referred to as an Appalachian, that would be somebody who lives in these states over here. So I see Kentucky, West Virginia, even Virginia a little bit. There's some North Carolina, Tennessee. I see Pennsylvania quite significantly. And even some of these states like New Hampshire and Vermont, Maine, Connecticut all have the Appalachian Mountains running through it. So it's a pretty significantly long range, but if you drive through them, they almost just look like they're big hills. They don't have those very, very steep peaks like the Rocky Mountains have. And that's because, like I said before, they're older mountains and they've had that experience of weathering and what's called erosion over time. Okay, well, I think this is just about all I have. So just the last thing I want to do here is just kind of zoom out and give you the best opportunity here to take a look at all of the spots that you will need to know. Now, today, when you're watching this, it's Thursday, right? So your weekly assessment will be posted at 4 p.m. today. You're going to receive a couple pictures, and they are going to be of these two maps that we covered. And there are going to be a few numbers on them, and I will show you what they look like. You are going to be asked to tell me what those numbered locations are, and your answers that you will give will be multiple choice, okay? So I will cover that in a later video, but I just wanted to let you know, you will be responsible for 5 things from each map, okay? Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, I will let you go for the day. Make sure that you're answering your exit ticket. I think this video will definitely help you out with that, okay? Have yourselves a wonderful little while here in the day. Don't forget to get that weekly assessment and exit ticket done by tomorrow so you can enjoy your weekend. We'll see you later.